Thanks for being with us. So, March 12th is the big date. What kind of impact are we seeing already?
So we're already seeing steel orders being cut. American buyers are looking ahead and saying, look, I don't want to pay the extra 25% tax. And with what we heard out of the White House last night, it might be as much as 50%. The 25% general tariffs on steel and aluminum that they're applying to all imports, plus the specific 25% that Donald Trump signed just for Canadian goods a few weeks ago. At those tax rates, American buyers just can't afford Canadian steel.
Um, 50%. I mean, I think a lot of people this morning are just going to be stopping. That's a sobering number. Um, how deeply do you feel this is going to affect the industry in the longer term? And I hate to be hyperbolic. Maybe it's not hyperbolic, but I mean, could we even be viable if he slaps 50% on Canadian steel and aluminum?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on how long these tariffs last. Trump has done tariffs on Canadian goods before. From May 2018 to April 2019, he did tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, and that lasted for a year. He also did tariffs on Canadian aluminum for the month of August 2020. That only lasted a month. If these tariffs last for only a month or a couple of months, it's not going to have a big impact up here in Canada. But if it's something that lasts for a much longer period, a year or more, that's going to have a significant impact. In Canada, we produce about 13 million tons of steel. We export about 6 million of that. So roughly just a little bit more than 40% of everything that we make here in Canada, that steel gets shipped to the United States specifically. So if we're not able to compete in the American market anymore, our steel industry is going to shrink by about half.
What's the reality of what that means? Obviously, job losses and companies that may have to shutter. But will they shutter or will they move to the States? And is that ultimately Trump's endgame anyway? Come and build your factory here.
Well, that is what he wants. He wants more production to take place in the United States. I mean, steel plants are not something that you can easily move. I mean, you're talking about billions of dollars in investment. Now, what we are seeing is that steel companies in Canada, some of them have started to delay reinvestment in their plants here in Canada because of the uncertainty. I mean, we will still continue to make steel here in Canada. We do have a big domestic market for it. We consume about 7 million tons of the steel that we make. But it will lead to a smaller industry here in Canada if these tariffs stay into effect for a longer period of time.
After the first round of tariffs with Donald Trump in his first presidency term, what did Canada do to insulate ourselves from future tariffs? And can any of that be applied now, or do you think we're in a completely different ballgame given that he's come in with a stronger mandate from the American people?
Yeah, so there's a few different things that we learned from the last time, such as having dollar-for-dollar tariffs on American goods. To send them a message. Look, we do not want a trade war, but if you want to get into one with us, we're willing to fight back. In 2018, we put tariffs on about $16.6 billion worth of American goods. And then in 2020, we put tariffs on about $2.7 billion worth of American imports coming into Canada. The federal government has already talked about having tariffs on American agricultural products because we buy $28 billion worth of farm products from the United States every year. So that's one thing that we could do. The other thing that steel manufacturers have been looking at is upgrading their technology. So a couple of years ago, the federal government put $470 million into a new electric arc furnace. This is a technology that uses electricity rather than the traditional coal-fired method. It cuts greenhouse gas emissions by about 70%. And what that does, it produces a product that we call green steel because it's much more environmentally friendly. And the Europeans, being more environmentally conscious, are really interested in that product. So if we're looking to diversify our potential export markets, adopting the new technology on a broader scale across the country would be a significant option for us. But I think it would take federal funds to encourage the steel manufacturers to do that.
Now, you may not know the answer to this, Colin, but I just want to dig into something that came up here in Manitoba. So when it comes to supply chain issues and tariffs, we were talking to Selkirk yesterday, the city of Selkirk, the mayor, sharing with us, as I said at the beginning, that some 70% of the steel produced there heads south of the border. But they're not selling it necessarily into the States. They are going through the States with the product. So it's part of the supply chain. It may spend some time there to get somewhere else. Or vice versa to come into Manitoba. So my question is, do we know how tariffs are going to be affecting things where the States isn't the end market?
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting issue. So a lot of the steel comes into the United States. Some of it gets shipped back to Canada, either as more refined versions, or a lot of it goes into auto manufacturing. These tariffs are going to be very devastating for the auto industry that relies on this steel. So this is going to push up the cost of cars by a few $1,000s each, cars and trucks for families. This is going to be a pretty significant issue because steel is used in construction. This is going to push up the cost of building large buildings, infrastructure projects. This is going to have pretty widespread repercussions for the American economy, Canadian economy, as well as other economies around the world.
And there's no exemption if it's not your end market. If you're just moving through, there's no exemption. You're still going to be tariffed.
No, that's it. Once it goes into the United States, it's going to be 25% at the border.
Colin, Mang, thank you very much for this. Obviously, we've had an ongoing series of interviews. We'll continue to try and understand more and more about what could be happening in the future. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Colin Mang, Assistant Professor of Economics at McMaster Universities.